the silent rebellion. The desert wind carried whispers of resistance. In a dust-blown village tucked between the mountains and endless sands, a school stood like a lone candle in darkness. Inside, rows of young girls repeated phrases from tattered books, their voices light but determined. The woman guiding them, Miss Alara, moved slowly, her rounded belly a testament to the new life growing inside her. She was 7 months pregnant and still refused to stop teaching. Alara had once been a teacher in the city before everything changed. When the new regime, the settler dominion, rose to power, they declared education for girls an offense. They shut down schools, burned libraries, and arrested those who resisted. But Alara did not run. She retreated to the village where her grandmother had once lived, and she reopened the abandoned school. It had been quiet rebellion. She taught in secret, covering windows with cloth, warning the children to speak of school to no one. For months it worked. The villagers respected her. Some were afraid, but many were proud. But fear crept in, slow and poisonous. One of the villagers, no one knew who, had informed the settlers. Raiders were coming. Alara first heard the news from an old farmer whose grandson studied in her class. He arrived breathless, his voice breaking. "They know," he said. "Raiders. 4 of them. Armed. They'll reach by morning." Fear gripped her, not for herself, but for her students, for her unborn child, for the knowledge she had tried to protect. But Alara didn't cry. She dismissed the class early, sending the girls home through the old forest paths. She stayed behind, packing the few supplies she had, unsure of where she would go. She tried to think like a survivor, not a teacher. She needed shelter, but most of the villagers would not risk their families by hiding her. She was alone. Night fell. Alara stood behind the school's back door, her satchel heavy over her shoulder. The moonlight cast silver lines on the earth, making it easier to spot movement. Every rustle of grass, every crack of twig sent her heart racing. And then, hooves. She saw torches in the distance. The raiders had come. Alara ran, but her body, weighed down by pregnancy, slowed her. She stumbled, caught herself, and kept going. Her lungs burned. Her legs trembled. Then she saw a shadow near the trees. A man, tall, cloaked in brown, his face hidden beneath a hood. She froze. "Miss Alara," he said. She recognized his voice. It was Kale, the quiet outsider who had arrived in the village months ago. No one knew much about him. He lived alone in a small cabin beyond the hills. He bought supplies with old coins and rarely spoke to anyone. The villagers said he had once been a soldier. "I heard what happened," Kale said. "You need to come with me." Now, Alara didn't hesitate. She followed. They vanished into the trees just as the raiders reached the school. The building that had once been a haven lit up in flames behind them. The cabin in the hills. Kale's cabin stood hidden deep within the hills, surrounded by thick woods and jagged rocks. It wasn't easy to reach, which made it the perfect hiding place. As Alara stumbled through the forest, her body aching and her breath short, Kale kept her steady, guiding her over roots and stones. By the time they reached the cabin, her legs could barely carry her. Kale opened the wooden door quickly, helping her inside. The interior was small but warm, lit by a single lantern and heated by a stone fireplace. Old books, hunting gear, and dried herbs hung from the ceiling. It was a place built for survival. "Sit," he said, bringing her a blanket and a flask of water. "You're safe now." Alara dropped onto a wooden chair, trembling. The warmth of the room finally allowed the fear to sink in. Her school was gone. The children had scattered, and the raiders were still out there. "They burned everything," she whispered, more to herself than him. Kale nodded grimly. "I saw the flames." Alara looked at him. "Why did you come for me?" He paused before answering. "Because I've seen this before. Cities turned to ruins. Villages emptied. Women punished for teaching. My sister was one of them." His voice hardened. "I didn't help her in time. I'm not making that mistake again." Alara didn't know what to say. In the flickering firelight, Kale looked like a man who had carried pain for too long. "They'll come looking for me," she said. "They always do." Kale stood. "Then we'll be ready." He moved to the shelves, pulling down a war map. He showed her paths through the hills, caves, and hideouts that no settler knew. If they come too close, we'll move. But for now, rest. Despite the fear in her chest, Alara felt a small ember of safety. It had been so long since anyone had protected her. The next few days passed slowly. Kale rarely spoke unless necessary, but he made sure she ate, rested, and stayed warm. He brought her news from the nearby village, where settlers now roamed freely, questioning villagers and searching houses. But no one had spoken her name. Still, danger crept closer. One evening, as the wind howled and smoke from the fire curled into the rafters, Alara felt her baby kick. She gasped softly and placed a hand on her belly. Kale noticed. "Is everything okay?" She smiled faintly. "Yes, he's strong." Kale asked, a rare hint of a smile on his face. Alara nodded. "I think so. I dream about him sometimes. A boy with my eyes and his father's kindness." Kale hesitated. "Where is the father?" She looked away. "Gone. He died defending a library." Silence followed. Kale didn't ask more. He respected her grief. Later that night, Kale sat outside sharpening his blade while Alara rested. But neither of them noticed the shadow that moved between the trees. The raiders had picked up her trail again, and they were closing in, fire in the trees. Kale had always trusted the forest to keep secrets. But that night, something felt different. The wind had gone still. The birds had vanished. The trees were too quiet. He stepped outside, scanning the dark edges of the woods. His soldier's instinct twitched. Inside, Alara slept, one hand resting protectively on her belly. The fire had burned low, casting soft orange glows across her face. Kale picked up his bow and moved silently through the trees, placing traps as he went, thin wires, noise triggers, and camouflage snares. He moved like a shadow, making no sound. He had done this before, long ago, in another war. By the time he returned to the cabin, Alara was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed. "They're coming, aren't they?" she asked softly. He nodded. "They're close. Maybe a few hours. We need to move before dawn." Alara stood, wincing slightly. "I can do it." Kale helped her gather supplies. Dried meat, clean water, a blanket, and her small notebook, the one where she had recorded the names of every girl she taught. She refused to leave it behind. As the first light of dawn bled into the sky, they slipped into the forest. But the raiders were faster than Kale expected. By mid-morning, smoke rose from the direction of the cabin. "They burned it," Alara said. Kale's jaw tightened. "Let them. They think fire means victory. But they've walked into the wrong forest." He led her toward an old hunter's trail. The path curved around the cliffs and passed through deep ravines. Only someone who had studied the land could navigate it without falling. Kale had memorized every inch. They moved carefully, Kale scouting ahead, Alara following with quiet determination. But her strength was fading. The climb was steep, and each step grew heavier. "We can rest soon," Kale said, helping her down a slippery slope. They reached a narrow cave hidden beneath an overhang. Kale lit a small fire inside and blocked the entrance with branches. Here, they could breathe, at least for a while. But rest didn't last long. That night, the sound of voices echoed through the cliffs. The raiders were near. Kale looked at Alara. "I'll draw them away. You stay hidden. Don't move until I return." "No," she said firmly. "If something happens to you, what happens to us?" Kale met her gaze. "I have a plan." Before she could argue, he pressed a small knife into her hand. "Only if absolutely necessary." He disappeared into the darkness. Alara sat alone, every heartbeat louder than the last. She remembered the school, the children, the books, the songs they used to whisper. She thought of her baby, of what kind of world he would be born into. Gunfire cracked in the distance. Screams followed, then silence. She waited. Minutes, then hours, and finally, a soft whisper near the cave entrance. "Alara, it's me, Kale." He stumbled in, bleeding from a wound on his arm but alive. Two down. The others retreated. "We have time." She helped him bandage the wound, her hands steady despite the trembling. "Why did you come back?" she asked. "I told you," he said, his voice hoarse. "I don't leave people behind anymore." That night, huddled in the cave, they didn't sleep. The fire flickered low. Outside, the forest breathed. Inside, hope flickered like a spark, small, fragile, but real. The baby kicked again. A sign. They weren't done. A new dawn. The cave had become their world. For 3 days, Cale rested while Alara tended his wounds with the herbs he'd collected. The bleeding had stopped, but the pain remained. Still, Cale never complained. He stayed alert, always listening, always watching. Alara, too, had changed. She was no longer the quiet schoolteacher, hiding in fear. She moved with purpose now, gathering water, preparing food, and keeping the small fire alive. She had faced the fire, the fear, and the chase. And she was still standing. But time was running out. The baby was coming soon. Her body was telling her, every hour growing tighter, heavier. They couldn't stay in the cave. She needed safety, warmth, a place to give birth. "We can go west," Cale said, pointing at the map he had redrawn with charcoal on the cave wall. "There's an abandoned ranger outpost 5 miles from here. Still has a roof, a well, and supplies." "Is it safe?" she asked. "As safe as it can be. No settler patrols go that far. Too deep in the wild." They left before dawn. Cale leaned on a wooden staff he'd carved, his wounded arm strapped to his chest. Alara walked beside him, determined. Their journey was slow, each step a challenge, but the land was quiet. And finally, by dusk, they saw it, the outpost. It was hidden between thick pine trees, its walls covered in moss, but it still stood. Cale pushed open the creaky door, and they stepped inside. There was a stove, a bed, old medical supplies, and a single window facing the rising sun. It was perfect. They cleaned the place, secured the door, and lit a fire. That night, Alara went into labor. It was long, painful, exhausting, but Cale never left her side. He wiped her forehead, held her hand, whispered steady words into her ear. And when the baby finally cried, strong, loud, alive, Alara broke into tears. "It's a girl," Cale whispered, smiling. Alara looked at her daughter, swaddled in cloth, resting against her chest. "She will know the truth," she said softly. "She will read. She will learn, no matter who tries to stop her." Cale nodded. "And I'll protect her." Days passed, then weeks. The raiders never came again. The villagers whispered that Alara had vanished into the mountains and been swallowed by the earth. Some said she had died. Others believed she had escaped to the old lands where no settler ruled. But the truth was simpler. In a quiet cabin beyond the forests and fire, a teacher, a soldier, and a child lived in peace. And every morning, as the sun rose, Alara opened her notebook and whispered lessons into the silence. Because knowledge, once planted, never dies. It grows in silence, in shadows, and in the hearts of those who carry it forward. The end.